Hi friends, welcome to Amy Bakes. I'm Amy and today we are going to be making these amazing chocolate chip pecan scones. The recipe came from Taste of Home Ultimate Baking Cookbook. Fantastic book. If you don't have it, I highly recommend it. The original recipe was submitted by Trisha Kruse and it is a hazelnut chocolate chip scone. We've made a slight alteration and we've used pecans instead. So let's get started. So for our ingredients today, we're going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 cup of cold butter, 1 large egg at room temperature, and we're going to use Daisy's egg. If you remember from my last video, I talked about my 3 hens and their different color eggs. And Daisy's my favorite because she lays blue eggs. We're also going to need 1/2 cup of buttermilk. And I am out of buttermilk, so we're going to create buttermilk by using lemon juice and milk. We will also need 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1 cup of chocolate chips, and 1 cup of chopped pecans. And some of the supplies we will be using is a bowl to mix it in, pastry blender, an assortment of measuring spoons. I will be using this to cut the scones, a pan with some parchment paper. So that's all we're gonna need. Let's get started. Okay, first thing we wanna do is preheat your oven to 400. And while that's heating, start putting everything together. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is get 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And you wanna make sure that you spoon your flour. You don't just scoop it out. You wanna make sure you loosen up your flour and spoon it in. And then measure off the top with the back of a knife. There's 1, and we'll do that again. Okay. And spoon that out. There we go, and 2. And next we're gonna add our brown sugar, and I've already packed that. I had to use a little bit of dark brown sugar because I didn't have quite enough of the light brown sugar. Next is going to be 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I've already pre-measured those together. We're gonna add that. And then 1/2 cup of cold butter. And it says to cube that, so I'm going to grab a knife and cube that. I'm just going to cut this kind of into little cubes. There we go. And then, set that in there. Then we're going to cut that in and cut that up with a pastry blender. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to take a pastry blender and we're going to cut that butter, mix that in. And then I'll do something a little bit different. Once I kind of get that cut in there a little bit, then I'm going to get in with my hands. I will show you that in just a minute. Let me get this mixed in just a little bit more. Okay. You'll notice a lot of times in my cooking, I get my hands in my recipes. So want to make sure that you always wash your hands before you get started. Okay, now I'm going to get my hands in here and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Okay, clean that off just a little bit. Okay. Now I'm just going to get in here and I'm just going to squeeze this butter in with this flour and the rest of these ingredients. And I'll just get in here with my hands, squeeze it, and then just kind of do this and kind of break it apart. So squeeze it and then break it apart. And I'm going to do this until this is completely mixed in and the butter is completely incorporated into this flour. Okay, you can see this is a great consistency and the butter is completely incorporated into the flour. And there's no spots of just dry flour. The butter is really worked in there very good. And I'm going to show you this. When I squeeze it, it kind of holds its shape, and then I just break it apart like that. Okay, what I'm going to do next, you want to keep this butter cold. So I'm going to set this in the freezer, and then I'm going to whisk the egg, the vanilla, and the buttermilk together. So I'm going to go set this in the freezer, wash my hands, and then do the rest of this. Okay. Now, since I didn't have buttermilk, what I did in a pinch, if you don't have buttermilk, is you can add lemon juice to milk to create buttermilk. It is a tablespoon of lemon juice to, and then enough milk to create a cup. So I just did half of that. I did a teaspoon and a half of lemon juice and half a cup, or enough milk to create half a cup, because a tablespoon is actually 3 teaspoons. So we use half of it. So now I'm going to whisk in my Daisy's beautiful blue egg. And how much vanilla does this call for? 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. But if you know me, I measure vanilla with my soul. That looks about right. And so I'm just going to whisk this together. And then I'm going to get my dough out of the freezer, and I'm going to mix this together until just moistened, and then I'm going to add the chocolate chips and the pecans. I'm going to mix this in. And we're going to stir this until moistened. You don't want to over stir. You want to be very careful about that with scones. Stir that in until everything is moistened. Then we're going to add our nuts and our chocolate chips. And then we're going to turn this out onto a lightly floured surface, and we're going to knead it just a few times. Okay, going to add our pecans and a cup of our chocolate chips. And mix this in. I didn't post a video last week because we went on vacation. We went to Grand Lake of the Cherokees in Oklahoma, way up northeastern Oklahoma. We had a great Airbnb vacation home right on the lake. I'll see if I can get my son to add some pictures so you can check it out. Absolutely beautiful. Like I said, I'll have my son post some pictures, and if we can figure out how to post the link to the cabin, I'll have him do that too. It's wonderful, highly recommended. Really clean, great, well-stocked kitchen. We were able to cook the entire time we were there, which was kind of fun because we didn't have to go out to eat. We got to stay at the cabin and really enjoy ourselves. Okay, I'm going to take this over and we're going to knead this and then get ready to put it in the oven. So we're going to turn this out onto a lightly floured surface. It says to knead it just a few times. You don't really want to be careful not to overwork that dough. And dump this out. Again, got to get those hands in there. And we're just going to knead this a few times. And I'm not kneading very much at all. And then you want to kind of shape this into a circle. Now this is going to make 8 scones. The recipe calls for 8 scones. They're really big scones. I usually cut it into 16. And you can do 12, you can do 8, you can do 16, whatever you want to do. Okay, but I think I'm going to cut that into 16. Or I might do 8, I don't know. So I'm going to use this scraper to just cut nice evenly. You know what, we'll just go ahead and do 8. We will follow the recipe just like I like to add the sparkling sugar to the top. You see those, if you go to Starbucks and you see their blueberry scones, they have the sparkling sugar across the top of it. I like to add it. It's not called for in the recipe. It's just something I like to add. So it's really an optional thing. Just sprinkle this on. And now I'm going to move those over. Okay. Now I'm going to pick these up and I'm going to move these over and transfer them. You can either grease your cookie sheet or use parchment paper. My preference is parchment. All right, we're going to move these into our preheated oven, and they need to bake until golden brown. It says about 15 to 20 minutes, so we're going to start with 15. Then we will check them and bake them a little longer. These are ready, nice and golden brown. I did end up having to cook them for the full 20 minutes. And so now we're just going to let them cool, and we will move them over to a wire rack. Don't these look amazing? I do hope you will try this recipe. I will put the original recipe in the description, and then the alterations that I made I will note in parentheses. And so, but I do hope you give them a try. If you are enjoying the videos, please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you'll be notified when I upload a new video.